What's up guys, Kyle at Fortune Off-Road. In this video, we're swapping out our steel wheels for some aluminum beadlocks. Oh. Like always, let's get all the questions out of the way first. Why are we swapping out to beadlocks? Well, I think most people know the beadlocks do just that. They lock the bead of the tire onto the wheel. In this case, they are single beadlocks, so it's just the outside of the tire will be locked to the wheel. In most cases, that's enough to keep the tire from coming off the bead, but it'll definitely prevent it from spinning on the wheel. And then the other huge advantage of having a traditional beadlock like this is you can change the tire on the wheels yourself. It really isn't very difficult. Previously, I've had to go to the tire shop to get them to change out the tires for me, and it sucks because it's like $100 and you have to wait, and any unusual instructions you might have for them, like in my case, putting balancing beads in there and I'll iron them up myself or whatever, they kind of get weirded out by that, and it can make the situation take longer or, you know, be a little bit confusing. All right, so I've been running this channel for a few years, but I've been wheeling for a long time. I haven't ran many rigs with beadlocks, and the question is why? Well, really, it's because the price. Beadlocks are expensive, and in this case, they're aluminum, so they're even more expensive. So why do I want to go with aluminum? Well, that's because they're lighter. When you're going up to a bigger tire, especially on something like the Jeep or a Samurai with stock axles, weight is a factor. Of course, yeah, the tire diameter and all that leverage is huge, but the weight is also a serious factor. And once you have a steel wheel and then you have a steel weld-on beadlock or whatever kit you might go with, it gets really heavy and you can start breaking some parts. So you can still do that with aluminum wheels, but I'm trying to keep the weight as light as possible. So the funny thing is the Samurai has these 1-tons on it now, but these are almost the same wheels I just ordered for the Jeep. So it's a company called Vision. They make a single side aluminum beadlock that looks like that. Gonna get this baby opened up. We're gonna start configuring them. It takes a long time to put beadlocks on wheels, and it's not difficult, it's just tedious. We'll go over some techniques I have to hopefully help me and you out. Sweet, let's do it. All right, so the first thing we've got to do is put some valve stems in there. I'm using these ones from Slime. These are 1 1/4. The valve stem comes out in the middle of this wheel, like right between the spokes. So you're either going to need a long flexible one, a 90-degree, or a short one so you can get the chuck in there. What I like to do is use a little bit of laundry detergent, or you can use some like dish soap, and I just put a little bit on the neck to help smooth it up so it can go in there. And then there's actually a tool that'll help you install it, so I'll go grab it. So essentially you just push this through the hole and you'll screw this threaded tool on. It's got a kind of a rubber pad, and you'll just use leverage to pop it in. This one looks a little bit differently, so you'll have to see how I use the hammer to put it in there. So I've got it pushed through the hole. Now I'm threading the valve onto the tool, which you won't be able to do when you go to get it off. And then I place the hammer between the tool and the wheel so I don't mar it up, and then just use this leverage to pop it in. All right, so now it's in there. It's flexible, so I can pull it to the side a little bit and get it out. Throw the cap back on there. All right, next step, bring your tire out. Figure out which side you want to be on the outside if it matters to you. I'll use whatever side looks like it's in better shape. So this was the outside before, so I'll make it the inside now. Probably hear my bouncing beads moving around in there. And as this starts to go in, you start working it that way. And then give it some help. So I put a piece of cardboard down before, so if this hits the ground, hopefully that'll help keep it from getting all marred up. Now we need to flip it over. We're gonna rest this on a bucket while we tighten down the beadlock with all the bolts. All right, now we've got to get this lip centered around here, and it is a tight fit, so it's really important that this thing is centered on there. On these wheels, you have to be careful because where these threads got put through, there's some shavings there, and they are sharp. right? So this is a critical part of the beadlock install. You've got to make sure this ring is nice and even all around the tire. If it's not, the tire's going to be a little wonky on there and you could get some vibrations. So what I'm going to do is start threading these on, make sure they've got at least 2 threads before we get going. I think it would be okay to snug them down. Just make sure your wrench or whatever, I'm going to be using this impact, just make sure it's on a very low setting so you don't start torquing these down, because the starting torque is only 20 inch-pounds. It's not a lot at all. So I'm going to get those snugged down, and then I'm going to show you the process I use to make sure we're going in a right pattern. It's going to have these safely bolted on. So when you go to mount these on, you'll see that there's actually 2 holes where every bolt needs to go in. And now what I assume that is so if any of the threads get messed up, you could just kind of like rotate it an inch and try those threads. Pretty cool idea. One thing to keep in mind here is that these bolts are grade 8 and this is going into an aluminum wheel, so not a great mix. You've got to really take this part seriously to make sure you're not going to mess up the wheel, and it's going to be safe for you on your rig. All right, so we've got to tighten this down in a star pattern. It's going to be 5 tightening patterns going through the whole thing. I'll end up doing 6 or 7 just to make sure that final pass is going to be torque down evenly between the rings. So every time you go to torque this down and you do a revolution, the bolt that you started on is nice and tight, but by the time you get around to it again, it's going to be loose. So that's why the final one, I'll do probably 1 or 2 additional passes just to make sure they're all torqued down. But it gets hard with this many. You're going to want to divide it up into sections. So what I'm going to do is place this tape directly across from each other to break this up into 7 bolt sections. Star pattern, and I mess this up every time. You'll probably see something funny in the process, but I'm going to start 1, 1, 1, 1, and just keep doing that as we spin around. The directions that these come with are pretty basic, but this is the key part. It starts at 20 inch-pounds. If you start at 20 foot-pounds, you're going to be 12 times the amount of torque on just this first step. It goes 20 inch-pounds. Actually, that's the second step. It starts at snug each bolt to the tire bead, which I'm going to do with my wrench, which is probably not recommended. Second round is 20 inch-pounds. Third round, go to 20 inch-pounds again. Fourth round, 60 inch. Fifth round, I'm probably just going to divide that by 12 and do 10 foot-pounds. Last round is 240 foot-pounds, which should be 20 foot-pounds. Then I'm going to go around the whole thing probably once or twice and make sure it's good. It says make sure you retorque the bolts after the first 50 miles. All right, let's get started. All right, there it is. That's the full process for 1 wheel and tire combo. I'm gonna take this masking tape off, gonna air it up. Hopefully that works out. If it does, keep going with the rest of them. All right, we'll position it this way so we can get that really good pop sound when this tire hits the bead. So, you know, the hardest thing about swapping out wheels for me has been the lug nuts. These wheels have been great. We've already had 2 kind of videos that featured these wheels in it. One was just wheeling up at Winter Fun Fest, and you know, got a couple of questions about the wheels. Told everybody they've been great. Honestly, since I swapped to these wheels and the hydraulic assist, this thing drives like a dream on the road now. Not really sure what the deal is there. Maybe that hydraulic assist is hiding some vibration in the steering wheel that I was feeling, or maybe those steel wheels were just not really as round as they should have been, but the thing is driving great now. There is one thing that I'm working on right now, and I'm just finishing it up, and it is the only difficult part about swapping to this wheels, like I mentioned earlier. All right, so here's the lug nuts that I was using on all my steel wheels, and you can kind of see that rust ring on there. That's where this was contacting the wheels, and if you look at it like this, that's not a large contact area. But I liked using these ones because they're really simple, they're short, not too flashy, and they're 3/4 socket, so it's really easy to just have a 19 or 3/4 laying around, and you know, that's a common size I use for my bolts. But the challenge is right there. So you can see how much room is around that stud, and it is a huge crown opening on these wheels. So I probably ordered, if you include this one, I ordered 3 different sets of lug nuts after this, and none of them worked. The hard part was finding one that was deep enough to take all of the threads, but also had a bigger shoulder right here, because you can see that shoulder is huge. And when I put this up there, you can see it's not gonna bite enough in there. It worked for that first run, and then after the first run I torqued them down again, and you know, they needed to be tightened a little bit. So after I torqued them down, I could see it started to eat into the aluminum a little bit. See if we can notice here. Yeah, right there. You can see that shoulder is getting ground down a little bit, and it was also digging into the aluminum. So what I decided to do was get a hold of Vision and ask them, hey, what lug nuts should I use with your guys' wheels? And these are what they recommended. They're called ET style lug nuts. I've never had to use them before, and now that I have them, being like the 4th lug nut that I ordered, I can really see why these are a great option. I've just never had to go this route. And when you put them side by side, you can see the difference. They have this huge extended thread section. This part takes up some of that gap in the wheel, almost all of it actually, and then the shoulder is way bigger than the lug nuts I was using before. So these aren't, I want to say these are absolutely perfect, but they're really good. You can see right there how good it's sitting in there. It's contacting a lot of the wheel. That extended part of the thread is going way in there and taking up all that gap and minimizing any ability to wiggle around. So I'm gonna throw this last one on, torque it down, we'll be good. So normally I'd say I'm a black wheel kind of guy. The ones I wanted to get are the same wheel, but they're black background with a machined lip. I thought that was a really good look. Otherwise, my second choice would have been all black, but these ones ended up being way cheaper, and I've seen a lot of people running these ones on their rig, and I thought, you know what, it actually does look pretty clean. Unlike my YJ, this thing has just got these little berries from the tree in my front yard all over it. Definitely needs a wash, but these things make it look a lot nicer than it actually is, in my opinion. The only thing I would do a little bit different if I got another set of aluminum beadlocks is I would have looked for something like the trail ready ones that have a bigger beadlock ring. The reason why I like that is because it does a better job protecting everything in here, including the valve stem. My locking hubs right here, these are still really exposed, and when you get sideways into some rocks, like my one on the other side is pretty scraped up already. My wheels are already scraped up after just a few runs, but overall I think they look really good. Highly recommend. I'll put the link to these products down in the description, and you can check these out for yourself. I think they're an awesome deal.